Welcome to our class on web authoring with HTML using Bootstrap. So, what I want to talk about in this specific module is understanding how to get started. If you want to follow along, it's very simple. You don't need to install anything fancy. And no, they did not give me a plug for this. If they want to, that's totally welcome. But I'm going to plug REPL.IT. Now, REPL.IT is one of the premier platforms I've used within education as a professor and a doctoral candidate to actually develop things on the fly and very quickly without the need for downloading anything to my PC. Now, in my daily life, I still use interactive development environments such as Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio, whatever the year that I'm using at that moment. Notepad++ is also a nice tool, but REPL.IT seems to be my number one go-to when I'm training or advising junior developers and students. So in this class, if you want to use REPL to follow along, that's totally fine. This class, I do not have a Git. And the reason why I did not create a Git for this course is because if you want to do some of the assignments, what I am going to do is I'm going to create a Git repository with those assignments in them, but not a Git repository that has the assignments and the code. Because in this course, you will need to develop the code yourself. That includes developing your directory structure. Now, there's a couple of things I want to go over to get that directory structure under control before we get started. First things first, you need to log in to REPL. If you don't have a REPL, then sign up. I have one, so I'm going to log in. My suggestion is if you have a Google account, which at least 50% of the population does because they have Androids, it makes a lot of sense to use Google. The other 50% can use their Apple account, and that's totally fine. What it'll do is it'll do an Okta transference of the actual account information, and you don't have to use username and password to log in. Great. Now we're in my REPL. Now my REPL has a couple of things in it. Obviously, I already have a web authoring HTML here, and that's the one I'm going to go into to show you what I need what I need your specific REPL to look like. But what you will do is you will go to create, and you will create an HTML, CSS, JavaScript REPL. Now, we won't be using JavaScript in this course. If you need JavaScript, it will be supplied to you through my Git. Otherwise, I would say click HTML, CSS, JS, and don't worry about the name. If you want to name it something relevant, go right ahead. Otherwise, the title that's in there is totally fine. Just understand that this title will be the title that you use when you want to see your REPL in the web page. Now, while you're developing, there's a couple of things you will see. So let's create this REPL. And as I create the REPL, you will see a couple of things pop up. I have my index.html, which is my first page. And if I wanted to change that, I could just click on the left-hand side menu and change it. I also have my web view at the bottom and another tab for the shell. That's not important. The shell kind of runs in the background, and that's really what we want. In this case, though, however, this is the web page that you're going to see as you develop. So if I change the hello world to have an exclamation point, and I click Control S to save, it updates the page in real time. You don't have to stand up a web server. The page is already hosted using REPL.IT. With that being said, if you want to see this page outside the scope of this web view little page right here, you can use this URL to do so. And as a matter of fact, you don't even have to copy and paste it into another tab. All you have to do is click this button on the other side, and it will open that actual page in another tab. Great. Well, let me put this back the way it's supposed to be. And let's talk about the documentation you're going to need to use as you get to the next step in your REPL, in your journey. The documentation that you will need to use as a reference comes from Bootstrap. Bootstrap is one of the premier subject matter experts and libraries, frameworks that we use inside of our industry, into the web development industry. So, with that being said, what I suggest is that you use Bootstrap as a reference, because we will be using Bootstrap components to build the things we need to build into our REPL and our website. Now, when you get into Bootstrap, you can start off with the examples, and we will be using some examples to get started, such as the starter template. Just understand the starter template doesn't have much in it. It has a couple of things that you can use, but it's not going to give you the nuts and bolts of what you need to be successful. When you build your page out, we want to use docs. because docs tells us all the things we can do. We can customize how to get started, the layouts that we can use. We will be using containers and grids. We will be using columns and rows. It will tell you how to use specific typography. You can change your actual Bootstrap components as you download them, because you have to download the files to use, or you can just use Bootstrap's files directly from their CDN. There's also form control elements and the vaunted components. We'll be speaking a lot about components in this course. And this is really the last piece of the puzzle, other than understanding that if you need any other information, always use W3 Schools as a reference. They are the path forward to understanding HTML, CSS, JavaScript at its lowest level. There's a lot of conjecture about how W3 Schools is very rote. It's very simple, but that's not fair. That's not fair to W3 Schools specifically. The reason why is because it's telling you how to use things at its bare minimum. It's telling you how to use things at its best. So let me go ahead and get rid of this and show you something else you can do. So right now I didn't like the fact that I had the white screen at the bottom because it was actually messing with my green screen. So what I can actually do is I can come into this menu here and ask it to put another window to the right of this window. I can also say left, up, or down. When I insert right, it gives me a couple of options I can choose from. I actually like the web view. So the web view is something that I would put here. Now notice I have the white screen issue again. So in this case, I say, okay, you know what? Let's just do without that. Let's actually put this to the left and then do the web view. And now I'm happy. So with that being said, this is all you will really need to get started in your REPL journey. As I say in all of my classes, good luck, have fun, ciao.